to record as well. Okay, here we go. Welcome everyone to Central Falls School Board of Trustees meeting, June 24th, 2021, the very last meeting of the school year 2021. Here we are. Thank you all for being here. Sorry for being a few minutes late, just trying to get everybody ready. We have a full agenda, lots of discussion to go through today. At one point, I'm going to ask just for us to switch a little bit of the order of the agenda and push something a little bit to the end to give Glenda Liz Colon time to join us. She'll be in late, but I'll start with roll call so we can get going. I just lost the agenda. Okay, so my name is Sonia Grace, Vice Chair, calling the meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. I'd like the roll call. Andrew Branson.
Present.
Brian Estrada.
Present.
Hugo Figueroa.
Present.
And I'm here as well. So we have quorum to excuse absences for the record. Stephanie Gonzalez and Diosa Martinez, who can't be here today. And as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, Glenda Liz Colon should be joining us at around 6 o'clock. On the agenda, we have meeting minutes of May 27th, and I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We'll go first. So there's a motion by Andrew Bramson and seconded by Hugo Figueroa. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. I'm also an aye. Oh, before I forget, I always forget. Para quem precisar de intérprete em português e espanhol, embaixo no ecrã tem um botão que diz Interpretation. Clique no botão e escolha a língua que prefere. Hugo or Brian, would either of you do this in Spanish for me, please?
You can do it, Brian.
Okay, Hugo, you're it.
Ok. Para aquellos que necesitan traducción, pueden darle clic al botón allí. Se necesita la traducción para el meeting.
Thank you, and apologies for forgetting that again. Next item, agenda is 3. Actions, considerations, layoffs, rescissions, resignations, recalls, and retirements. And there is a memo from Patricia Martinez, the Chief of Human Capital and Community Development. We have two tables on their hire, transitioning out of office of a union, out of a union role. We have Maria Pedraza, Carmen Ruiz, Eliza Rivera, Stephanie Perota, and Elisa Lambert. And then no layoffs, no retirements, but we have a few resignations. Caleb Encarnacion, Kelly Mayer, Ashley Ferranti, Kim Limer, and Caitlin Pronitz. Did I say that correct? I hope so. Apologies if I did not. So I would entertain a motion to accept this memo. We were not approved, we're just gonna accept it.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Brian Estrada and a seconded by Andrew Branson. Any discussions, questions for the superintendent on this memo? Andrew.
Superintendent, can you tell us about the 2 resignations from the principals?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, this is not an uncommon discussion we have at the end of every year. However, this time I would argue is a bit different. Both principals who have resigned, it is for family and or health related reasons. So one principal is actually going to take a virtual principalship to be able to have a more flexible schedule for her 3 young children. And the other principal has decided to leave the principalship for the time being. So we are very grateful for both of their leadership and are very happy to share that people who have worked on their teams very closely with those schools have accepted the position of principal. So Alyssa Rivera, who you saw on the board memo there, and is one of the founding teachers of Raices, went through the principal residency network this year under Principal Limer and has accepted the role of principal of Raices. So we're so excited that one of our teacher leaders has stepped into that role and will keep the great work happening. And then Lisa Zagarella, who has been the assistant principal at Calcut under Ashley Ferranti, who resigned, has accepted the role as principal. So we are thrilled that we have some continuity, even though we're losing two great leaders.
Brian?
Yeah, is there or has there been or is there a plan or are there plans to have like exit interviews? I think like over the past few years there has been a lot of principal turnover. So I think I'd be interested to hear like what if they're willing to share like more specifically, you know, how their experience was. Like I just like to hear more, you know, from
Absolutely.
the instead of just a memo.
Absolutely. And if the board ever wants to be part of some of those discussions, it is done through HR and we learn a lot. I will say, anecdotally, both leaders are, we've had conversations about perhaps them even returning to CF when things are different in each of their own lives. So it is certainly parting on very good terms. But I do hear your point, and it's something I'm very conscious of and can share either now or later, but do also want to celebrate a bunch of those transitions in the team, because we are, while we are losing some great folks, we are also retaining a lot of great folks in new leadership opportunities. And so for as many goodbyes, we're also celebrating some expanded leadership of many of our current team members.
Absolutely. I think the first three names on the transition to leadership positions are absolutely worth celebrating and highlighting that we are able to grow talent that we have. These are folks that have been with us and have shown their commitment and done really good work. So to be able to bring him to a new position in leadership places for us is I think it's worth mentioning. So, oh, there they are.
Yes. So these 8 team members are all taking on new leadership opportunities. And it is also worth noting how many of them are alumni of the high school. So it's not just retaining talent, but a lot of people who have been warriors since they were students. And so we're thrilled. I mentioned Alyssa and Lisa, but also want to celebrate Carmen Ruiz, who has been an incredible guidance counselor at the high school, has decided to take on a new opportunity as our director of progressive pathways. This is sort of a reinvented version of what was multiple pathways previously. You probably remember Dr. Heather Dos Santos was in that role, and we've had it vacant now since she left about 1.5 years ago. And so we're thrilled that Carmen will be taking that on. Both Javi and Noel and Lesden, all 3 of them are currently on the restorative team at Calcut, and Calcut is doing sort of a rethink of their structure. And so we're thrilled that Javi and Noel will step into dean roles at Calcut. And then Lesden, I'm very excited to share, has accepted a role on the district team, and she is going to be our project manager for equity implementation. This is a new role, but as we think about doing an equity audit and creating a strategic plan for the years ahead, Lesden has always been someone who's held us to a higher standard always, and making sure that we're living out the district's values. And so we're thrilled to have her transition after finishing out her restorative work through the summer program. She'll make that transition. Tatiana, another alum, recently moved from her role overseeing sort of all out of school time and enrichment into a role on the finance team as our director of grants and federal programs. Previously, Juan Tavares was in that role, but transitioned to RIDE. Maria Pedraza, CF resident, CFSD parent. She will be leaving Raices, where she's been the incredible school secretary, and returning to the district office. She was here prior, and she will be our new attendance lead, taking over for Marlene, who retired. And I think that covered all the internal transitions of different leaders. So we're so excited that the 8 of these folks have decided to take on these new opportunities.
Andrew, go ahead.
Thanks for that summary. And, I'm a big fan of Carmen. She's a former work colleague from a long time ago, so I'm excited to see that she's in this new role. In the fall, I think I'd love a presentation about this new title and what it means and what it doesn't mean. I think a lot of us are familiar with multiple pathways, but this term progressive pathways is new and different. And I think the board would really benefit from hearing about your vision and her vision for what that role is.
And I would say you don't even need to wait, because Principal McCarthy will be doing a presentation later. And one of the things he'll share about is some of the restructuring. So if he doesn't share it directly, that'd be a good question for him to answer after his presentation.
Thank you.
Sure.
And maybe we can think through, maybe for the beginning of the school year, maybe everyone settles into their new position, if we can just have that recap at the beginning of the school year to say, because when we're having these conversations in other places about job descriptions and roles and an understanding of who's where and doing what, and what everyone's goals are, and how does that all fit into the vision that we have. So maybe we can take some time over the summer to flesh that out, and just a quick presentation on not only these new positions, but what it means for the work of each of the schools as we move forward. And I'm sure that there will be other things that will happen throughout the summer that we can come back to in August or September and talk about.
I also, while none of these folks showed up on this month's memo, with tomorrow being the last day of the school year, want to offer a huge congratulations, as well as just appreciation for those warriors who are retiring. Roberta Emery gave 34 incredible years to the students of Central Falls. Donna Gattinella, 33. So that's a big loss for our kindergarten team, with both of them retiring this year. Marlene was an incredible truancy/attendance lead. And we have sent her off about a month ago, but celebrate her again. Cindy Stackle gave 29 years of service as a teaching assistant in the district. So thank you and best of luck to you. And finally, Mr. Volpe, Bill Volpe, has been in guidance 31 years in the district. So we wish all 5 of them the very best and thank them for all their years in the district.
Sorry, muted. Go ahead, Brian.
I just wanted to say that I know that we looked at the slide earlier, but it makes me really happy to see the transitions that you mentioned, and like not only CF graduates, but also folks who are culturally, linguistically, ethnically, racially representative of our community moving into those positions. So I'm really happy with that. Thank you. I do have another question before we move on. I don't know if we're going to move on right now, but I was wondering if there was any update on the, I guess like on hiring of some of the teaching positions that I know last time we spoke about from folks who had to leave, the teaching ones. Specifically, I guess like the math team, I remember I had mentioned how there were a bunch who were leaving. So I was wondering if there was any leads on that.
So those have not been fully filled. We certainly have more vacancies going into this summer than ever before. Some of that is because we're adding so many roles thanks to the Relief Act funds, which we will certainly get into more later. But we will have a very active recruitment and hiring season ahead of us for sure.
Okay, so any other questions, comments on the memo? All right, so I had a motion by Bryant and a second by Andrew. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So I'm also an aye, so the ayes have it. The motion carries. Item 4, Central Falls School District Budget. 4A is the consideration of bills, grants, and general budget. I reviewed the bills this afternoon, saw nothing out of the ordinary. And I'm okay and in support of approving them, so I will ask for a motion to approve the bills.
So moved.
Moved by Ron, second.
Second.
Second by Brian. Questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm also an aye, so the ayes have it. And 4B, FY 22 budget.
Good evening.
Do I
Stuff
get-
you haven't covered. All right, Sonia or Acting Chair Grace, board members, Central Fall community, and teachers and friends, everyone in support of the district. I actually am going to go in reverse order to get to the FY 22 budget, if that's okay. All right, thank you. Next slide, please. So during our last meeting, we were asked as a district whether or not we use the funds that were allotted to the district to its best usage. Did we do a deep dive on it, and where did the funds live? And of course, you know, off the top of my head, I gave a very broad answer, but this is the breakdown of 1.8 million in CRF funds. And that's the Corona Relief Fund, which was the first set of funds we got federally from the government. And then we got an additional roughly about 800,000 from RIDE, that's 790K. And so I just want to go through this quickly, but you know, with some type of potency. And if you have questions, feel free to ask. So what I would like to say and to commend the district on is that after the analysis, all of the funds at its highest level lived with our students, whether it was face-to-face teaching, something that was needed to keep the district fully functional. So for salaries, you can see that most of the funding, 61K, went to school nurses. Then it went to teachers, substitute teachers, as teachers were out, you know, for COVID or quarantine or what have you, to psychologists. Then we got our network operational manager, which was needed because we're in a whole virtual environment, someplace we've never been. Then you can move on to the lunch aides at 17K. So now we can no longer host, you know, lunch within a cafeteria, but now lunch is in the classroom. So you have to hire additional lunch aides. Then as classes get smaller, you get additional aides, which are broken up to support the teachers. We did something with a community, which is the 7K for parent and parent family engagement, and then 2K for crossing guards as you know, students started to come back, and or even during those hybrid days. So you can see that the funds that were given out in salaries, they did not live in administration, but they lived as an active part of our student lives. Moving on to benefits, we were asked to retain as much of our employees as possible without giving off layoff notices, but to allow them to gain unemployment. So we had 168,000 that went to unemployment. And then the other 93,000 is attributed back to the salaries that you see, whether it's not FICA, medical, a dental pension, or what have you. So that's where our salaries and benefits lives. Moving on to professional and technical services, we spent 31,000 in curriculum development, right? So you're talking about what can we do to support the kids in a different environment, curriculum development. So that's 31,000 there. That we beefed up the tech team because there were more Chromebooks than anyone could ever imagine coming in, more network support than we've ever dreamed of. So we ended up spending about 30K in technical services. And then with the technical services, while you have people who are adept in one part of technology, we also had to hire a couple consultants to help. So that's the advanced on-site and remote support to help the tech team at 18K. Moving forward to property services, Rory did a fantastic job. That's the HVAC improvement and building maintenance. That's the only thing that he basically asked me, could he do. He knew students had to come back to a place that had good quality air. He knew that we wanted students back in. It was something that the superintendent kept working towards. So we spent 128K again in HVAC services, 139K in deep cleaning, which was part of the requirements for COVID and reentry back to schools. Moving towards supplies, 138,000, and I'm going in reverse order just the way that the slide formatted, but 138,000 went to textbooks specifically around online usage or the hybrid of textbooks and online books through American Reading, part of our core infrastructure to help develop the students' literacy. So again, that's 138,000. Then you automatically have general supplies for the students as well as for the facilities. That was at 117,000. Technology, again, they're working, they need shelves, they need bags, they need everything to support the device. Device in and of itself isn't enough. So that was 81,000. Next, property and equipment. So the 1.27 million, that's what we purchased in terms of Chromebooks. And Michael and his team and all the support staff, I can't name everyone, but they did a fabulous job making sure that everyone had a Chromebook at the earliest possible moment, being that the whole world was trying to get Chromebooks, especially here in the US. And so there was, a backlog, but I mean, we did a great job putting that money to good usage. Then you have educational textbooks and software, 73K. Human resources and finance, that's part of my wheelhouse. So what we were able to do was to transition from desktop to online. So should, God forbid, if there was another pandemic or any other reason, whether it was not a snowstorm or a hurricane or a tornado, we could all work remotely and still be able to give people their salaries and be able to pay our vendors. We spent 39K through Sergio. Dr. Pies, he found an MLL educational platform. So we put that for our students, and technology software. So again, I know that's a lot of information, but I wanted to be able to show with certainty that we put the funds to its best usage to what we could foresee at that point in time. Next slide, please. So this one has a lot of information too, but a little bit less, and it's more succinct. So I'm not sure if everyone recalls, but when the pandemic hit towards the end of the year, as RIDE and a number of other states were getting federal funding, they withheld our last bit of state aid. And so that last bit of state aid was to be supplemented by ESSER funds. If there was a deficit in the district that would appear because you all did not receive state aid, you were to take it from ESSER funds. So that's what we did here. I did not break out 30 positions or 40 positions, but the payroll 25, this is it right here. It went to salaries of instruction support, instruction as teacher, instruction support, those are your TAs, your leadership, those are your principals, your operating support, those are the people who sit at the bottom of LRS. So that's what it was for. It was so that we could be fully functional, be able to pay people their salaries because they worked all year. It was not our fault that the desire, or well, not the desire, but the method of payment for our staff changed. And so that was 866,000 in salaries, 340 in benefits. We did receive that money back from RIDE. That's 1.2 million. And then we had additional funds that went to technical services, like previously mentioned from the COVID relief fund. So COVID relief fund ended as of March of this year, but yet business still had to continue. So we built in tech support into ESSA funds as well. And again, HVAC work in the schools at 219,000. So all the money, again, or funds lived basically with the full functionality of having a district operating at its best possible usage. And so with both of these, the COVID relief funds, it was at 98%. We used what was earmarked to us. ESSER funds, we used 92%. And we did not want to go to a full 100% if we could not find a viable and justifiable expense. So that's how we use that. And so moving towards the FY22 budget. So here is the budget that is proposed to the board, to the community tonight. I just want to preface it by saying that I'm hoping that the last two slides have showed that we are trying to be good stewards of the money or the funds or gifts that are given to the district and trying to put them to its best usage. And so the general fund, or not the general fund, pardon me, our budget as given from RIDE up to the governor is still being voted on. However, what they're proposing to us is the greatest amount that we've ever seen. They're proposing $48 million to us. Now, 46 million was our magic number when we were talking last year. I believe that there was a not a protest, but a movement, so to speak, down at at the State House to be able to make sure that CF had what they needed. Well, according to everything we can see right now, we are set to receive as much money next year in our general fund as we received this year in our general fund, plus the COVID relief fund, plus the ESSA funds. So that is $3.7 million more we are expected to receive this year than last year. I just want to say that those funds can be used for additional materials for scholars. Sometimes I hear that, they say, well, we don't have books. And I mean, I don't get into the curriculum side. I allow those who are over curriculum to tell me what they need. And as long as we can be able to provide it for them, they have the green light. Have an opportunity to have more teachers, bridge the gap between our goals and the resource allocations that we did not have aforetime, and it also allows for long-term planning. There's nothing saying, even though we were forced to spend $48 million this year, that we have to spend $48 million next year. We show that there is a usage for it, but we have the general fund, we have some of these federal funds, and we know the federal funds are going to run out. So if we receive this amount of this 48 million, it will allow us to do some long-term strategic planning of sustainability. So this year to last year is an 8% increase in terms of funding. Typically in cost on a budget, it only goes up by 3%. So we're talking about almost 2.5% more than we could have ever desired or expected to receive. So with that being said, and you can see how the budget is broken out, I highly recommend, strongly recommend that this budget be approved and allow us to, once again, be good stewards to the community, to the students, to the board, and we will always report back in terms of where we are and how we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Simmons. I'm going to open it up for questions from the board. But before we do that, I just want to check on process. I got you, Ugo and Bryant. Superintendent, we have to approve this budget?
Historically, you all have voted on the budget at the June meeting.
So
know-
our agenda did not say that we were going to vote on it. It just said FY22 budget, didn't say consideration of. So usually that gives people a notice that we are going to be voting on it. So I just want to flag that. I guess it does say that we may vote on any item, but I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if the board understood that today you would be voting on this budget. So let's make sure that we have all your questions answered, that you feel comfortable that we can move forward so we can get this done tonight.
Great.
All right. Ugo, I think I saw you first, and then Bryant.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, that was one of my first questions. If we're gonna vote on this, I would like to have this so I can go over this. Do we got this slide, the PowerPoint presentation you just have, you just show? We
It is
did-
in the folder now. It wasn't there Monday when I sent it out. I added
Yeah,
it. So it's accessible now, but we were updating up until today.
If you don't mind, can you please go to the first slide? I have a question about the technical items. Let's see. Because I see on this one, is this one for a specific school or the schools?
This is for
Like-
a district.
Okay, because I see on the other one, the elementary and secondary schools emergency. I think it's the second or third slide. We got the same items there, like technical service, health, stipends, help desk, data management. So I just want to try to understand this. Lisa, we have technical release, technical data management. We have like a duplicated thing. So I don't know.
No, sir, I don't mean to cut you off. It's not duplicated. It's just being funded from two different sources. So if you went to a store and you bought a bag of chips and you took 50 cents off of one debit card and 50 cents off another debit card, it's still going to the same item. So it was just two different funding sources supporting the same the same people who are working.
Yeah, because for example, the 79K, and then on the other slide we have 24K, same thing, technical service, stipend, management. So, but if you say this is coming from different,
Yes, sir, it's coming from a different funding source, so that's why it's less. One out of one account, one out of another account is respected to the accounts.
looks like we've been spending a lot of money on IT, technology. A lot.
Leave money well spent.
Okay, thank you.
Bryant?
Hey, so I have two questions, one about FY21 and the other one about FY22. For the first one, Carrie, you mentioned, I think with textbooks, you said something about American reading. Is that separate from the grant? Because I think there was a time where we talked about a grant that we received for American reading. So I guess, can you clarify that piece? And then I do have a question about FY22.
No problem. So yeah, it's similar. I mean, you know, sometimes you can't get a full package or everything you need just from one grant. So if there are multiple arms that can support the lift to make sure you have a robust package, you know, additional items. Again, I don't know all the particulars of American Reading, but I do know that this was additional above and beyond that grant. Yes.
Carrie, thank you for that. I can add a little bit more, Board Member Estrada. So the RIDE CLSD literacy grant actually did not allow for those grant dollars to be used for digital literacy. And then the pandemic hit. And so that money that Carrie is referencing was to ensure that every student and parent and teacher had access to the American Reading Library, thousands of books in English and Spanish from home during distance learning. And I also just want to, Board Member Figueroa, I hear you that it is a lot of money on technology, but I do just want us to remember when we entered the pandemic, we only had Chromebooks at the high school and they were 7 years old. So we did have to make a huge investment, but we went from just one school having devices that were very old to all students across all 6 schools having technology that was new. So that's why those numbers are so large.
Yep. Nice.
And then the question, sorry, Andrew, you can go and then I'll go again.
Go ahead, Brian. It's okay.
Okay. So for the FY22, can you go to that slide, please? All right. So you mentioned for the other purchase services, it talked about tuition for charter, whatnot, right? My question is, I know that the House recently approved a bill that had to do with like automatic opt-in for students all over the state into charters. I don't know what the plan is for that, or if there has been any conversations with RIDE in regards to how that might change these numbers. If there is any change that would happen with this.
I don't have any information, any additional information. I mean, I do talk to the person there. I won't name who she is so that she's been bombarded, but she does provide what they consider to be the trajectory for the district in terms of tuition. We base the budget off of that.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, trying to let Glendalee in. Go ahead, Andrew.
Director Simmons, on this projected budget, the FY22,
Yes, sir.
I get that we have an 8% increase across the board. What can you say about what that breaks down to amongst these budget categories? Are there categories where we are significantly less than 8%? Are there budget categories that are significantly more than 8%, or is it pretty consistent in these categories as it relates to the overall?
Well, I'm hoping this answers your question. I basically scaled up the numbers to meet the 8%. So even if the projections were at 5%, 3% per category, I scaled it up for 8% so that we could receive the funds that were earmarked for the district and then allow us to reallocate at the end of the day. I mean, I don't believe that the budget should, and I'm again hoping I'm answering your question, I don't believe the budget should be static. So for instance, if salaries went up 4% and supplies went up 1%, but something else went up 9%, that's on us to reallocate those funds to meet the budget. For me, this is more about the end game of the 48 million being allocated down to the categories more so than being restricted to the categories.
So what I hear you saying is we have this budget, but there is still flexibility within categories in the upcoming fiscal year as needed.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
I want to let the record know that Glendalee Collins joined the meeting at 6:10. Glendalee, we're going over the FY22 budget and also speaking about the funds that were allocated to the district for COVID relief. So we're having just some questions and hopefully you can join, and if you have any questions, let us know. Anyone else?
Perfect, thank you.
Hugo, Bryant, any other questions? If no one else has one, I have one, if I may. And this may be more for you, Superintendent. So the presentation on the funds, the COVID relief funds and the RIDE funds sort of broke down from the perspective of finances. This much money went to this one. What qualitative evaluation are you doing So, and I'm picking an example, but not necessarily, I have no information on it, just as an, oh, sorry, as an example. If, for example, the MLL educational platform, we bought a platform, has that given us the results that we hoped? If we were to buy it, would we buy the same? Like, and I don't have to speak about that specifically, but as you look at where the money went and how it was spent, what is that qualitative evaluation that you're doing as we move forward, so that we don't sort of just repeat the purchases without really thinking about whether it actually gave us the results we wanted?
Thank you for that question. It's something that we really value, is ensuring that we are doing not only after action reviews, but mid action reviews for how we're making these investments. And so that's been something that's been done collaboratively across finance and program, to ensure that as we shape the budgets for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, that we are learning from where those investments did yield the outcomes that we were intending and drive us towards our shared goals. That process looks different depending on sort of which category, for sure. To follow the example that you used of that educational platform, some of it is based on teacher feedback, some of it is based on usability, and some things we haven't even had in place long enough to truly say that. Interestingly, was one investment that we made just toward the end of the year. The platform, for anyone who's wondering, is called Elevation, so English language learner Elevation, but it is certainly aligned to our goals of wanting to be more data informed as we support the instruction and learning of our multilingual learners. So what I would say is the broad strokes sort of framework that we run all of these investments against is, are they student-centered? Do they align with our district strategy and goals? And have we seen a benefit in this initial year? Then you could take a totally different example that's not at all tied to a curricular resource. And just today, Carrie and Rory and I were meeting to determine whether those additional custodial team members who we brought on as team members specifically to handle disinfecting. So we had committed to the last day of the school year, which is tomorrow. And so that became a question of, let's weigh whether the investment for these additional team members, and I'm not talking about the whole custodial team, but those additional folks who full-time are helping us wipe down doorknobs and surfaces that are touched most frequently, or when a classroom turns over. And we were able to look at our COVID data and see that we didn't have any secondary or tertiary spread, and survey those staff who work in schools and decide that we will keep those team members on for our summer program. So that's sort of how we are evaluating each investment, as to whether it's keeping students safe and in school, and centered. Are they at the center of the investment? Does it drive us towards our goals? And then we go from there. And then, of course, there's the fact that across ESSER 1, 2, and 3, there have been slight adjustments to what's allowable. So that is also factored in. So later on in the superintendent update, when I share about our plans for ESSER 2, you'll see that we expand from more than just the categories that Carrie has shared here.
Okay. Anyone else? Can you also then just give us your view, your thoughts on FY22? As a leader, you have to implement it. How does it feel? What is your recommendation? What are your thoughts for this board as we prepare to approve it?
Sure. So as Carrie said, I certainly support the approval of this budget. I would say I am cautiously optimistic that we will actually see the full, but until that is set. I think part of the reason that Carrie strategically ensured that there was cushion in all categories is because, to be quite honest, there is always the sort of chorus to the way RIDE responds and says, hey, just be prepared for level funding. So while we don't have a need to go with our signs as we did last year and protest or anything like that, there have been enough hints of don't assume the money's there, you know, and we've learned over the years, like until the money is distributed, don't go ahead and spend it. So we are cautiously optimistic. If we receive that full amount, then I fully support this budget. And of course, the COVID relief will be a game changer, ESSER 2 and 3, for how we can actually implement the dream budget that you all tasked us with pre-pandemic, as though you were foreshadowing that we would one day have this miraculous investment of tens of millions of dollars.
Thank you. Okay. So any other questions? Anyone else? Okay. So we do need to approve the FY22 or consider the FY22. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the FY22 budget as presented by Superintendent Donnie Toledo and Director Carrie Simmons. If anyone would like to make that motion. I don't have a motion.
So moved.
Okay. Right. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Seconded by Ugo. Okay. Final questions, comments, concerns?
Just one more question. And I know I have too many things in my head. We got 120,000 for the COVID, right? Relief fund. Is that what we got for COVID? 120 million, or
It was
20 million, something like that.
1.6 million, I think. 1.8. 1.8.
1.8.
In that first so far, then ESSER 2 is about 6, and then ESSER 3 is 15 million.
So what's close to 120, something like that, right?
It's about 22 million if you look across 1, 2, and 3.
How are we using that? I know some is using it. I was at the last meeting last night at high school, but how are we using the rest of the money for the COVID?
So those first 2 slides that Carrie shared talk about that first round of relief money. So that's sort of what got us from March 13th, 2020 until now. Then later on, I'll share a summary of how we propose to spend ESSER 2, which is the 6 million. That is due to RIDE next Thursday. So we got one more week to make some adjustments. And then we won't even start drafting the ESSER 3, which is the largest pot of money, the 15 million, probably until late summer. But what nationally and locally, the conversation is that what we originally thought would be just for 2 school years is now likely going to be accessible for 3 school years, 4 summers. So we believe we'll be able to use the ESSER 3 funds even further out than we originally thought, which is great.
Thank you.
Before we vote, can you share with us the budget, the FY22 budget, maybe with a little bit more detail, just a little bit of those sections, the descriptions that you have? Doesn't have to be down to the nitty gritty, but just so we could have it just so we can understand a little bit more of what's in there, if you don't mind. And it can be done after this meeting at some point.
Well,
Okay. All right. So we have a motion by Andrew Branson and a second by Ugo Figueroa to approve the FY22 budget. So we're going to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We'll
Aye.
vote.
Ya está, dice ahí.
All those opposed? Okay, so I am also an aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Thank you so much for all the work you've done. Let's send that out and hope that we do get what we are expecting. Please keep us informed as the conversations happen. You know, in the next couple of weeks, things are going to go very fast. So anything that happens or any advocacy that we need to do to get this budget the way we deserve it and the way it should be will be appreciated. We'll be looking for that. Thank you both. Okay, now we are on to old business. These were two things that were tabled at our last meeting. The first one is the cleaning service RFP award. There was a memo in your package that came from Rory Marty that explained RFP, but Superintendent, if you could give us a little overview of what that is. And then I am going to ask that we sort of push the superintendent's contract to sort of the end, because we need to go into executive session for that. And there's other things, and I'm not sure if the families here for homeschool are in the meeting or anything. So we just want to sort of get some of the business out, and then we'll come back to that if that's okay with everybody else. Everyone on board. Okay. So cleaning service RFP.
Great. So at a high level, we have had a private company working in partnership with the district for the past 3 years. However, coincidentally, this was not because the contract was ending, but 15 members of our team, although they are employees of the private cleaning company that we are currently with, came to us with a lot of concerns that they felt, let's just say they came to HR and myself, and that our conclusion is that we could not continue with that company based on what we found in our investigation. And so they were one of the bidders for in this proposal that went out. However, there was no way, based on what we learned, that we were going to continue with them. We did do an analysis of what it would look like to bring those 15 team members on sort of in-house, if you will. We consider them part of the team. They are working to keep our kids healthy and learn in safe, clean spaces, and we value each and every one of them. However, at this time, for a host of reasons, it did not make sense to bring the team fully into the district. So we have gone with a recommendation for a different private company, and that was the proposed group that Rory put in the memo that was in your packets. I will say, in order for history to not repeat itself, we do have a lot of ideas for how we will partner differently with this new company if it is approved, to ensure that we don't face the same issues. So putting some additional structures in place to ensure that those team members are respected and valued, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so I'm going to entertain a motion to approve the award of the cleaning services contract to SJ Services of Danvers, Massachusetts for a 3-year contract with the option for 2 additional years. And the cost of year 1 is $886,000. So I'll leave it at that, and there's other costs for the other 3 years. So I'll entertain a motion, and then can discuss, and if you have any other questions, we can talk about them. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Move by Brian. Is there a second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Brian and a second by Andrew. Questions? Andrew?
Superintendent, what can you tell us about whether the bid that we're considering here was the low bid? And from a procurement perspective, what is the district's obligation to consider cost as it relates to the overall recommendation?
Great question. Since Carrie is on and was a member of the review team, I'm actually going to ask him to respond to that question.
No problem. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you for the question. So this wasn't an actual bid. We went through the RFP process to allow us greater flexibility. So for those who don't know, a bid requires you to accept the lowest bidder. And it kind of handcuffs you, whereas a request for proposal allows you to find a responsible and responsive bidder who will provide qualitative work. And so when we came down to the table, there were 3 companies at the table, all ranked that we could go with them. And then again, as the superintendent said, once we learned that the previous company who was the low bidder, had certain practices, we said we had to move on. So they ended up being, I want to say, the highest bidder, but not by much. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it wasn't so astronomical that we said the district could not afford it. It was just at that point in time when we were ready to vote, we said, let's save the district some money, but they were all within the same ballpark.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, obviously fiscal 2021 from a cleaning cost is not relevant, and even fiscal 20 isn't relevant just because of, where does this, and I know that it's going to be a little bit different, but where does this $886,000 for fiscal 2022, how does that compare to what we ultimately spent in fiscal 2019, which is probably the most reasonable base year compared to?
I can get back to you with that, but also the contracts automatically move up every year. So I think it's relative, but I will let you know what that is. I will let the board know and the community once we get back, if you would like to represent that or, give that information back out to them.
I can also share, because I have all 5 options up. If we had stayed with the current, who has been in place since the time frame that you're asking about, they were within $4,100 of SJ. So to Carrie's point about the cost going up each year, if we had stayed with NFS, we would be within just a few $1,000s of SJ.
So the cost difference wouldn't be considered material, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Thank you. That very helpful information.
I'm happy to add this to the board packet as well, if that's helpful.
Ugo?
Yeah. So how much is going to be for 2 years? It's going to be a 2 years contract, right? 2 or 3? 3. Is that 186,000 or how much is going to be?
So for the first year, it's 886,000. It does go up each year. The total for 3 years would be 2.74 million. To add this to your packet right now.
The name of this company is AJ Services?
SJ.
SJ.
In your packet, you have a memo, Ugo, that describes the.
I was looking for that.
Yep.
Are they working for another school?
They do. They do.
Thank you.
And can I just, one of the things that we have always done is keep our staff, correct? So they'll be doing that as well.
Yes, we're very thrilled that all those team members will have the option to stay, even though the company switches. So yeah, we definitely that was important to us.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Any other questions, comments from anyone? All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? I'm an aye as well. The motion carries. The cleaning services RFP has been awarded. Well, the contract has been awarded. We're gonna wait on superintendent contract if you don't mind and move on to new business, where we have homeschool application and early release for professional learning and collaboration.
Great. So starting with the homeschool application, this is a family who has done this for a couple of years now and is just ahead of the game. We usually don't receive the letters until closer to September, but my recommendation would be that we approve the homeschool request.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Andrew Bramson and a second by Hugo Figueroa to approve the homeschool application. Any questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Right, the ayes have it. I'm also an aye. The motion carries and the application is approved. And then B, new business 6B, early release for professional learning and collaboration.
Okay, I'm actually going to share my screen to talk through this one. So you may recall, although it feels like a lifetime ago, that pre-pandemic, the high school had just started a model where they were doing an early release every other week in order to increase the amount of professional collaborative time that teachers had. So before that, we were not even meeting the Rhode Island secondary regs, which say that teachers should have an hour a week to collaborate and gather professionally to learn. So we have found one of the silver linings of the pandemic has been that we've had more professional learning time than ever before. Most years it's 2 PD days before the start of school, and then elementary has 1 hour a month, secondary was having 2 hours a month per the contract. So in the pandemic, through this school year, we actually have had all teachers receiving almost 3 hours a week because we had an asynchronous learning day, learning afternoon on Mondays. And so this has become a part of how we are really improving our practice, how we are accelerating student learning, and it's something we really would like to be able to continue. The proposal that I'm bringing to you today is differentiated by grade band. So at the elementary level, we have to implement a very significant amount of professional learning around the science of reading. And this is actually part of the Right to Read Act. So this is state law we have to follow. And so the proposal would be that we would do 7 early release days next year. So about once a month, but not even every month, where students would get out at sort of the half day. We'd make sure they have a bagged lunch to go home with, and then they would do asynchronous learning in the afternoon. 7 times an 11 a.m. dismissal would be 24 and a half hours across the whole school year. For Calcut, they will be implementing new curricula, actually many. And so we are really hoping that this professional learning time beyond just the science of reading would allow for them to be coming together to lesson plan and norm on lessons for these new curricular resources, norm on expectations for students, offer feedback. And so the proposal for Calcut would be actually 70 minutes of early release time for students every week, totaling out to about 42 hours of asynchronous learning for students. And then at the high school, their proposal would be to continue with what was happening pre-pandemic that the board had supported, They also will be implementing new curriculum. And so they would like to continue with the every other Wednesday model that they had in place, which is 90 minutes less of instructional time each time it happens, totaling out to about 27 hours across the whole school year that would become asynchronous learning for students. Any questions on the differentiated proposal?
Andrew.
So Superintendent, I recall before the pandemic, a pretty spirited discussion that we had about students and what they were doing after work, while post dismissal, and how families were being supported. Seems such a long time ago. What will be different this time around from that perspective? And you know, I'm obviously in support of this, but I want to sort of ask the question now as opposed to have the conversation in October, which is, you know, parents concerned about the sort of the other side of the coin on this. What can you tell us about that?
Great question. And I think the biggest thing that's changed is that we now have a plan for asynchronous learning. We certainly didn't have the technology to do it, and it was not a practice necessarily. There was more traditional homework, but not necessarily, you know, posted lessons or flipped classroom models where students are watching a video of instruction that then they will be coming into class the next day ready to apply. So this really, I think, can be enhanced from what it was prior to the pandemic, because we now have structures and the resources to do asynchronous learning. I, with the principals, have also been exploring some of the opportunities that we were doing in the pre-pandemic model, where there could be some of our after-school programming starting earlier. So certainly clubs and sports and other support and intervention could then start with the use of some of our warrior fellows and other partnerships that we're working on to ensure that there would be opportunities for students who couldn't necessarily, or families who didn't want their child to necessarily go home early. So we'll want to make sure that those options exist across all the models.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Why is it being done this? Sorry. I thought I had turned it off. Anyone else? Questions? Okay. So this, we would vote on it today. And it would be approved. The communication to families would look like what?
Much better than last time. No, we would message right away. I think what we'd want to do is ensure the dates are solidified so that families can plan and have notice. But we also want to secure some of the partners so that we can also simultaneously message what some of the options will be for students who would stay at school to either do their asynchronous learning in a supervised and supported setting, or some of these other clubs. So I would say by midsummer, we would want to be messaging to families about the dates and the options. Absolutely. So we'll come together the first Thursday in August. I would say by then that communication would already have been sent.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve this plan. And then a second, and then we'll do a couple other questions if there are any, and then take a vote. So can I have, would anyone like to move?
So move.
Well, thank you. A second?
Second.
Okay, we got Glenda Lee's, got Ugo as a motion, and Glenda Lee's a second. Final questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I'm an aye as well, so the motion carries. We are looking forward to see how this goes. Hopefully it will work out really well and we can get this done the way we envision it. Thank you, Dr. Toledo. Okay, let's do public comment. So if you would like to provide public comment to the board, could you please write your name on the chat? And then I will call you as I see you coming through. And the chat is open to anyone who would like to enter their name. Give it a few more seconds. Okay. I do not see anyone signing up for public comment. Again, if you'd like to speak and provide public comment to the board, this is your chance. I think they're all ready for us. Okay.
I have someone who's trying to add their name in the chat and she cannot. Her name is Carolyn.
I think, Michael, are you able to see Carolyn? Dr. Lita, can you stop sharing your screen? Thank you. Okay. Carolyn, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead and speak. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Hello, I'm sorry. I'm just pulling it up. I made a quick note. Hi, good evening. My name is Karen Leonardo. My daughter is a kindergarten at Veterans Memorial Elementary. Before anything, I would like to give flowers and thank you to the amazing teachers that my daughter had this year. Ms. Durst went above and beyond. At one point, not only was she teaching her in-person students, but she was also running her class virtually for the students at home. With the help of Ms. Boasting and Ms. Alicia, she was able to run both. As a parent, I can tell you that she cares about her students and puts in an effort. We were blessed to have Mr. Doobie, who took the time to take the kids on a virtual field trip by showing them animals around his house and answering all their questions. Mr. Bohemic, that truly enjoys music. I'll miss hearing him sing in the morning. And last but not least, Ms. Gatanella, who is retiring this year after dedicating 39 years to the education. 34 of those years were spent in the Central Falls School District. She should deserve a thank you for all her hard work, her dedication. Her love shines even through a computer screen. At times, students would beg her to stay on with her, and she would. Now that my flowers have been given, I would like to express my disappointment in the school. I truly do not understand how a small graduation ceremony for the kindergartners or even a drive-by graduation could not be organized. I can name 10 ideas from the top of my head that could have been done for these children that would have cost the school almost nothing but the staff time. I understand that to some, kindergarten graduation is not a big deal, but to a family like mine that actually busted their behinds to make this school year work and to get our children through it, a little hooray would have gone a long way. Anything could have been done for the family and their children. Hats off to principals and staff at Ella Risk and other schools in the district that found this milestone to be important. Thank you for y'all's time.
Sonia, you're muted.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? You can also raise your hand if you are having a hard time putting your name in the chat, but I see Stephen DeLeo. Mr. DeLeo, there you go. Mr. DeLeo, are you there? We cannot hear you. You are unmuted, but there's nothing coming through. You are muted now. unfortunately, we can't hear you. We can tell you're speaking, but there's no sound coming through. You want to leave the meeting and try coming back? If you can leave and come back, but if no one else, we can let you back in. Okay, I don't see anyone else.
There are two other hands raised, I believe.
Okay.
Lisa Zagarella and Bev Ellis.
Okay. Lisa Zagarella, go ahead.
Members of the board, Dr. Toledo, I just want to say I'm very excited to accept the role as CalCut principal, and I'm looking forward to leading the building and working with all of you. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for supporting our PLC plan. We have been working on that for a while, and we plan to make excellent use of the time. If any of you ever would love to see how a PLC works and want to attend, you are more than welcome to join one of CalCut's meetings. And I look forward to serving the city and continuing our partnership. So thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations. Beverly Ellis.
Can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Okay, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Stephanie and also Dr. Toledo and Ann Lynch for supporting us, Mr. McCarthy, and all the staff at the high school for the graduation. It was lovely. And anyone else, I was unfortunate that I wasn't able to be there, but I understand it was beautiful. But I have a question in regards to the funding that we had gotten for the COVID. I understand that was a hazardous pay involved in this. Now, were we included in that for Central Falls, like the teachers and all of the people that worked during the COVID? That's my question. Should they have gotten hazardous pay during the outbreak? Because the custodians worked, the maintenance worked, secretaries worked.
If so on this during public comment, we usually will not answer these questions. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask the superintendent to look into it and to respond to you directly.
Okay, it's not for me. I
Yeah.
was not there.
Yeah, but that's fine. But we can get an answer to you as to
Someone
if
asked
they
me,
were.
and I couldn't answer it. But
And I
then
can't answer that either at this moment either. So
I
let's
was like,
do it.
I don't know. I'm no longer involved with the union, but I couldn't answer it. And I was like, well, I'll ask if I have the opportunity. But, you know, it was a good question and I could not answer it. And it was like, you know, that's something I would have liked to have known.
Well, thank you for your question. We'll look into that.
Thank
and
you.
get back to you. Thank you.
And have a great summer, everyone.
Thank you as well. And let's see who's there now. And I don't know if Mr. Leo wants to come back in. There he is. See his hand raised.
Can you hear me now?
We can, go ahead.
There we go. Hello, my name is Steve DeLeo, and I'm an English teacher at the high school for the last 23 years. And I have also served on the union's executive board for the last 10 years. I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself to the board as the new interim president of the Central Falls Teachers Union. I would also like to publicly thank Tracy Kavanaugh, Joanne Diggle, Noel Chartier, Doris White, Cheryl Thurber, Audrey Kilsey and the other representatives for their years of service at this time. Furthermore, I also wanted to just say that although the Central Falls Teachers Union may be going through a period of transition right now, that the leadership is alive and well and in very capable hands. I look forward to working with this board and the district administrators on the behalf of the 300+ members employed in the Central Falls School District to bring about the best public education to the families of Central Falls. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Okay, anyone else for public comment? I think that's it. Boy, okay, so we're moving on. Now my computer's dead. Someone tell me what's the next thing on the agenda. I just lost it. Hold on. Oh, here we go.
Superintendent comment.
Okay, superintendent comments. Thank you, Hugo.
Okay, well, my first comment is actually unplanned, but I'm getting live texts from Mayor Rivera, which are very exciting, related to everything happening with the bill that would fund a new high school. So if anything major happens while we're on, I'll be sure to let you know, but wanted to let you all aware that very exciting messages are coming through. But for the planned superintendent message, I actually want to invite Principal McCarthy, who is going to do a bit of a year in review for Central Falls High School, which was at the request of Vice Chair Grace following last month's presentation that just gave a touch of some of the information on the graduating class. And so this will be a bit more thorough. So with that, I will share slides and pass it over to Principal McCarthy.
Thank you, Dr. Toledo. First of all, I just wanted to say congratulations to Glendalise and Ugo for their daughter's graduation last Friday. As Bev said, it was, I think, a really nice graduation. Unfortunately for D. Ramos, who organized the lion's share of it, now people are talking about wanting to do it every year outside. We'll see about that, but it was very, it was a really nice, it was a great opportunity to have the graduation back in CF. So kudos to Dee and everybody who made that happen, as well as folks like Glendalise who helped to make it special for the seniors. So I'm gonna basically give you a fairly brief presentation, and what I'm gonna do is identify some of the challenges that were heightened during the pandemic, talk to you a little bit about some of the ways that we are looking to address those, and also give you a little bit more information around some of the data that you received a month ago, and talk about sort of our plans for how we, our goals for how we plan to both track that data and to improve upon it. So I often say, Stephanie is sick of hearing this, but my metaphor about COVID was that it was like an earthquake. And if this, if your school or your educational system is a house, what earthquakes tend to do is they tend to both reinforce to you what's strong about your house, and then cast into even brighter light the challenges that you have. And I think that was definitely true through the pandemic. Just a couple of numbers to give to you for this year and for last year. In terms of attendance, our chronic absenteeism rate was at 35% this year. Just a reminder that chronic absenteeism are students that miss 20 or more days of the school year, or 18 or more days of the school year, so over 10% of their learning. And so those would be full school days that they would be missing. In 2019-20, that was 30.5%, and it's well documented that that number is glaring and unacceptable. Other statistics, and then I'll sort of talk to you a little bit about sort of how we're addressing these. The number of students needing at least one credit recovery course entering their senior year is about half the class. So again, about half of our seniors come into their 12th grade year needing to do credit recovery for at least one class. And for many, it's more than that. And what that means is that when many seniors should really be focusing on what their post-secondary plans are, instead, their immediate concern is, what am I going to do to graduate? And when all of the energy is spent towards making sure you get your diploma, which is definitely a worthy goal, it does take away from, you know, what are the courses you're taking? What are the plans you have? What are the colleges you're applying to? What opportunities are you thinking about? Post-secondary opportunities are you looking for? To link to that, some of the data that we've been tracking is the number of 9th through 11th graders that are failing at least 2 classes each quarter. And that number is about almost a quarter of our kids in 9th and 10th grade have quarters where they are failing at least 2 quarters. Now, that doesn't mean that cumulatively that they're failing 2 classes, but it does mean that there are periods of time where they are not coming close to demonstrating proficiency. And of concern for us, you know, of greater as great a concern is that in 9th grade, those numbers are higher. And that is despite a lot of efforts through a 9th grade team of teachers that really work hard to try to create a special environment in the 9th grade year, as well as supports that you've heard about before in terms of supporting our at-risk 9th graders. Our graduation rate for this year, we had 107 students graduate out of 173 eligible to graduate. That's 62%. By August, we expect to be at 75% because we have about 20 to 25 students who over this summer will complete portfolio tasks, complete 1 or 2 credits that they have. Those efforts are already beginning. In fact, we already have a couple of kids who are in position to receive their diploma, even though they weren't able to do so by last Friday. To provide you some context for that, last year, which was also a pandemic year, but it was pretty consistent with what our graduation rate has been in the past, was 77%. Talk a little bit more later about our goals in terms of where we see our graduation rate moving. One thing that I think that you all clearly identified, and I'm sorry I couldn't be at the meeting a month ago, was information about post-secondary transition plans for our seniors and follow-up after they leave. Yes, graduation rate is important, but what is also important, and admittedly is difficult to track, is how successful are our students being once they leave Central Falls High School? Are they entering the workforce and being successful? Are they entering school and staying in school? What's happening to them once they graduate, no matter what that percentage is? One way that the state measures success is through the Commissioner's Seal. The Commissioner's Seal is the number of kids that you have, the number of seniors you have who have met a specific number for the PSAT or SAT in English and math. That number is in the high 400s, low 500s. And so we had 13 students who earned the Commissioner's Seal this year. That number can definitely be higher. And again, we're taking steps to address that. Even though you don't teach the test, we know that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that we really should be having kids who are more successful on the SAT or PSAT, no matter what you think of that measure as a determinant of success. We had 5 students this year earn the Seal of Biliteracy, which is lower than in past years, but in a district where we have so many students who are bilingual, having students earn what they need to for the Seal of Biliteracy is, you know, again, we should be leading the way in terms of the Seal of Biliteracy. And the last thing that I just want to mention is our SurveyWorks data. And I don't know how familiar you are with SurveyWorks, but those are the surveys that parents, students, and teachers take. The state requires all schools to take them. And our survey work data is encouraging. And I'm going to highlight, two in particular, student-teacher relationships. And if you look at this slide right here, you see the categories, and this is a screenshot of what you see when you go into Panorama. And so this is how students responded. And so our school teacher student relationships, which is the fourth one down there, that 60% of our students responded favorably, which is a 12% increase from past years. When you look at that compared to other high schools, that is above the percentage of what most high schools have. So it's validating the relationships that our teachers, that our support staff have with their students. You can see that all of these are in the green, meaning that compared to last year, students' responses about their school environment and their learning have gone up, which is really positive. Another one I just want to highlight is school rigorous expectations, because that's something we've been focusing on. And that was an increase by 7%. And if you click on this, you see the specific questions that students respond to. What I would say about school rigorous expectations is that even though we are increasing there, we are still below what the high school average is in the state in terms of what students respond, in terms of what teachers expect of them in their classrooms. So those are a couple of key areas that I would highlight. You can see that school safety was our greatest increase, which I think is a tribute to Roberto Rivera, to our school counselors and support staff, in terms of our teachers, in terms of creating a safe environment. So this is another set of data that we look at in addition to some of the more quantitative data that I've been talking about. So give you a chance to ask some of those questions about any of those, but I do want to talk a little bit before that in terms of some of the things that we are doing to address this, because I don't think that any of the information that I shared with you was a surprise that came out of the pandemic. All of those, attendance, graduation rate, post-secondary plans, failure rates, are all pieces that we knew were right in front of us, and we started to create solutions to address that, and then all of that kind of came to a screeching halt, or a lot of it did. And so I want to talk just a little bit about some of the things that we're doing, and how we're funding some of that, because I know some of you, like Ugo, you asked about ESSER funds, and I can tell you a little bit about what our plans are for how we're accessing those funds at the high school. So one thing that we are establishing in September is an across-the-board period 6, sorry for the boring name, where every teacher is teaching. And all of those classes are focused on intervention opportunities for our students. So teachers are creating classes that, while they may have some different content, are all focused on Common Core standards, or depending on what the content areas where our kids struggle. Kids are being recommended for those, and then they will engage in 2-semester classes that will target those specific areas. We'll measure that. We'll see where they were at the beginning, where they are at the end. So we'll see how that works in terms of the specific class. But we also should see an improvement in grades in some of the other classes. We're also providing some elective options and things like PSAT and SAT prep for students who are at a place where they are demonstrating proficiency, where they can augment their skills. Like one really cool thing that Dr. Grant is doing is, I've been wanting to use podcasts, which is something that was an idea that Victor Ramos brought to us a couple of years ago, about CF kids telling their story. And so the idea is to really have kids create podcasts. I think one of the strengths of this community are the really unique and incredible stories that we have. And so podcasts are a great way to bring to light those stories about the rich heritage and the rich stories and the rich tradition of Central Falls. But in addition, that can serve as a backdrop for college essay writing. so that kids can become more proficient at writing, doing college essays. So those are the types of things that we're doing in period 6. And again, all teachers are teaching during that time. And the first semester during period 6 for 9th graders will be a Warrior 101 class where they will get support in terms of not only what our expectations are for the schools, but what are the skills that you need technologically, from an SEL perspective, to be able to be successful. So lots of exciting things, and teachers have really stepped up to provide really interesting opportunities, all focused on those skills. Opportunities beyond the core. This was our first year of a music program. I think that Dr. Toledo shared with you the video that Bryant Montalvo, our music teacher, put out in terms of courses that are available next year. Couldn't do it this year. We will have a chorus at Central Falls High School, which we're really excited about, as well as music production, music composition, and ultimately, if we have kids who are engaged, AP music, lots of different opportunities there. And we're continuing to move forward with our CTE, Career and Technical Education Pathways programs in health careers and computer science. Nick Lafreniere, David Upeghi, Allison Murray have done, and Jackie Barbosa have done great work in terms of bringing those forward. And by 2024, we will have our first graduate seniors who are graduating with CTE certificates. We're continuing to provide consistent opportunities for professional collaboration and teacher leadership. There are not a whole lot of opportunities positionally for teachers to exert leadership. There's plenty of serendipitous opportunities, but I really feel that one of the ways that a school gets better is by providing teacher leadership opportunities, and we're doing more of that, partially through the ESSER funds that we have, and increasing that and continuing that collaboration that was so valuable for us this year as we engage students in very difficult circumstances. As Dr. Toledo mentioned, we have high quality curriculum resources that is happening in English and math. The selection of those materials are happening this summer and into the fall. We'll pilot different aspects of that next year. We have support for teachers who are interested in doing that, and then that will be fully on board for the 2022 school year. We have a focus on interventions and post-secondary planning in 9th and 10th grade. One of the things that the data in the first slide demonstrated is that we have too many students who are not successful in the 9th grade year. The 9th grade year, I think, is widely recognized as the most important year as a determinant for students being successful in high school. And so we need to provide more support for our teachers, provide more support for our kids, our 9th graders, to make sure that they are successful. And that is one reason that we created the Director of Progressive Pathways program. And Bryant, you asked, like, what exactly is that position? What does Progressive Pathways means? And there's basically 3 things. And this is the position that Carmen Ruiz has taken. And I can't think of a better person to lead this work than Carmen, with her experience in the school and her knowledge of the community. But she'll be really focusing in 3 areas. She'll continue to focus on what I'll say is the reactive, providing the supports for seniors to make sure that they can make it to a point where they can earn their diploma on time, or at least, if not in June, in August, and providing supports for kids who even need a little bit more time than that. That is what the Director of Multiple Pathways, that was a major focus. But what Carmen will also be focusing on is, what are the ways that we can better support 9th graders and intervene more quickly than we normally do? So you've heard of individual learning plans. Really, what Carmen's job will be to create systems so that we are intervening with 9th graders as soon as the end of first quarter. We've already put some systems in place to help address that with our period 6 offerings. But Carmen, with her guidance background, is really going to be critical in terms of already doing what she already does in terms of working with the 9th grade team and the 10th grade team to really better support those kids so that when they get to 11th and 12th grade, they're thinking about pathways, they're thinking about internships, they're thinking about post-secondary options. I think for too long, excuse me, for too long, I think we've been a reactive school in terms of our students. And this is an attempt to really be more progressive and proactive. And what Carmen will also be doing is thinking about some of those pathways we can create for our kids, especially for our newcomers and our multi-language learners as they come into the building. What are pathways that we can provide for them so that if a student comes in at 16, they're here for a couple of years, they turn 18 and they say, well, now I'm going to go to work. How can we incentivize them getting their education and providing them opportunities to be successful in achieving their high school diploma at the same time? We're also providing intervention positions in math and English language arts for, that's part of the ESSER money as well, so that students who did fail will get additional support to help bring them back to a point where they can be successful in their 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And so that's all connected to the ESSER funds, which are really going to be critical. Our ESSER funds are going to help purchase those high quality resources I talked about. They're going to be able to afford us more opportunities for teacher collaboration through positions that we have. We are adding a social worker, and we have an additional school counselor that began this March, which is going to really allow us to personalize, better personalize for our students. We have more supports under the direction of Dr. Paez in class and outside of school for our multi-language learners, Saturday academies, after school programs. I mentioned the interventionists and also expanded summer opportunities this year, which really focus on student voice, which we're really excited about. So those are some of the ways that our ESSER funds are supporting us. And then the last slide, and I'm sorry, I'm throwing a lot at you, but there's a lot going on, is I just want to kind of get back to that piece around the post-secondary that I know I wasn't able to present last time. And first of all, if you had any questions about this notion of what RIDE has for our FAFSA completion, if you look at the second row there, the class of 2021, RIDE is saying that we have a 24% completion rate under the work of Jamie Hill and Sarah Gilkinson, who's our college and our college advisor, college advising counselor, along with Bill Volpe. Really, that number is closer to 50%. I can give you the specifics in terms of what that is. We had 169 students apply to schools last year, this year, but we really don't have a lot of specific information on that. So we need to do a better job of knowing where every student is going. And that again has to do with the ILP. The number of kids attending school right now that we know, and this is kind of a moving number because a number of kids enroll in CCRI, but right now that's just under 40%. So what you see, and then our graduation rate, 62% as of 6/18. In terms of our goals for next year, we want to continue, these goals will continue to increase each year, I don't want to undersell the amount of work that Sarah Gilkinson did this year and Bill did this year in terms of really working with kids, even though they were virtual, but we'll continue to do as much as we can to increase FAFSA completion. In terms of applications, our goal is that we know what every single student is doing once they leave. Whether it's the workforce, whether it's the military, we should know exactly what they're doing. And so that's kind of a bold goal, but I think it should be an expectation. In terms of students attending, I think 50% is kind of a low number, but I also want to recognize that there are realities that we need to continue to work towards. And so that is a number where I think that we can do much better. And I think that increasing our attendance by 25% is a worthy goal. And finally, we want to get into that 3 area on the RIDE report card where every year we have at least 80% and are moving towards 90% and ultimately 100%. But I think that a realistic goal for looking at next year is to get ourselves to 80% because we're right in that 79, 80% range. Even this year, we'll approach 70, we'll be in the mid 70s. So we can do better in terms of that. So how are we doing some of that? We have an additional school counselor. We have that additional layer of support with the director of progressive pathways. And we've also joined the National Clearinghouse which is an organization that allows us to really get a better sense of, provides us access to data on Central Falls High School alumni. That is historically, I can tell you, been a really difficult thing to track, but certainly this is one step towards getting a better handle on how our kids are doing, as well as taking advantage of the fact that many of our kids go to Rhode Island institutions, and oftentimes they can provide us information on who's still enrolled and who's not. And now I will take your questions.
Thank you. Everyone is very eager. Okay, but Brian was first, so go, Brian.
I have a few. I always really like hearing about like what's going on at CFHS. You know, as a high school teacher, I think it's great to like, you know, get an idea of how things are going there. So my question first off is about the Director of Progressive Pathways. Are there plans, since I know you said that, you know, very much working with 9th and 10th graders, plans to work with Upward Bound and College Crusade to do some of that like early on intervention? And if so, what does that look like, or other outside organizations? Yeah, that's the first question.
Yeah, so right now, Jamie Hill, our assistant principal, is our liaison with all of those organizations. I think it becomes a natural fit for Carmen to start to make some connections between them. So there are definitely plans, you know, like, so I'll give you an example that just came up today. We had a student who did not pass her math class, but she's in Upward Bound and she's doing summer work. And so she asked, can I get credit for the work that I'm doing in Upward Bound? And Jamie and I kind of looked at each other and said, yeah, I don't think we have an articulation agreement. So, you know, we're contacting Chuck and finding out, you know, whether that would be those types of, you know, if for lack of a better word, reciprocity agreements would fit. So I think you're right. The more we can make those types of connections, the better. But that would definitely fall under Carmen kind of coalescing. And, you know, we're joking, you know, Carmen's going to have to walk on water, but there's definitely a need to look at all of those disparate parts and make sure that they're not disparate, and make sure that they're, you know, that everybody's talking to each other.
Awesome. And I'd be more than happy to like touch base with any of you, like to bounce ideas off each other and whatnot. Definitely reach out. I'm always down for that stuff. My other question, so there's two pieces as well. I know, thinking about what students are able to do, what is it called? Like after high school, right? Ultimately, whether a student decides to go to college or not obviously ends up being a personal decision, right? However, I think that something very easy that I think easily can be done, and it can be like a last period thing, all teachers on deck, every single classroom that has senior students, open up the computer, CCR application, takes 15 minutes, right? At least that way we know for sure our kids have some sort of option. Right. And so I'm saying that as a person who had to apply to CCRI in order to do my math certification courses, right? I know that the process literally takes 10 minutes. Now that can be during that time, or an advisory or something like that. Just an idea of like, maybe that's a route to go with, like, okay, we can open up options for our kids, right? Now that's the first thing. And I think second thing, maybe seeing if there's a way, you know, to do, I don't know if there's like the possibility of maybe doing like an early dismissal for everyone but seniors for like an hour, and then during the hour everyone does FAFSA, right? Like that kind of thing, where it's like all hands on deck, everyone does it, no questions asked, look at this ride, right? We don't have 24%, we have 78, right? Yeah. And something like that I think would make a huge difference. So I don't know if that's possible. I know a lot of that would be logistical systems type stuff, but just an idea. And again, more than happy to bounce ideas off each other. So just let me know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you, Brian. I really appreciate that. So I think the one thing with the FAFSA, you know, is that it is kind of a one-on-one. It really becomes a one-on-one. And then there are always questions from the families in terms of the concerns about, you know, whether or not I should fill that out or not. So one of the things that we do plan on doing with this period 6 is, you know, one group that is not teaching a specific class are our 4 school counselors. So they will have a curriculum. And one of the things that they will do is either go into advisories to do that type of thing, or they'll be working in small groups with the college advising coordinator and anybody else to do that type of thing. But I would agree with you that there's like, if you put a tremendous amount of energy and you focus it while kids are in school, you have a better opportunity to at least get kids started on that process. I think the follow through has always been the challenge, but I think that's another opportunity. But I will definitely reach out to you, Brian. We can talk about some ideas.
His internet cut out, so we didn't hear it, but I will pass on the message.
Or better yet, I'll have Carmen talk to him.
There you go. Absolutely. Who's next? Who would like to go next? Google, go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, one of the questions, Brian took one of my questions, which is about the to follow up with the students after graduation. That's great, so we know how they are doing, if they need help, that's great. And I know we are getting a lot of money, so I hope. And first, I want to thank you for the presentation. This information is really helpful, and I hope. For next year, we can increase the the graduation rate. I know it was low because of the pandemic and a lot of issues, but and also about the progressive pathway. I know Carmen is going to do a great job on this, and I like this because I remember when Dr. Dos Santos was on this position, and I was able to see how she was able to help the students. So I think this is great that we got this position back, and I know Carmen is gonna do a great job with the students, and she's gonna be able to help them. So I just want to thank everyone, and I hope 2022 is gonna be better for all our students and teachers, because all the money we are getting, and I hope we use that wisely. We use the right way to improve the education for our students and help our teachers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also mention that the Director of Progressive Pathways position is not an ESSER position. That is a position that comes from the general fund. So that is a position that, is not an infusion of money for 2 or 3 years. That is a position that will be here. And you're right, Dr. Dos Santos did a great job, especially with her connections with families. And I think that Carmen has that same strength as well.
Thank you.
Andrew.
Thank you for the report, Principal McCarthy. I know that the attendance data this year really is just so wacky compared to previous years, and it's hard to compare one to the other. But I was wondering if you had any information, chronically absent is sort of the end of the line, but do we have data on what I would call super chronically absent, meaning they missed more than 50 days? And it's one thing to say that 35% were chronically absent, but it could be masking that we had lots and lots of students miss dozens and dozens of days. And what do you know about that, especially across the entire high school spectrum?
Yeah, good question. So we are actually having conversations this week because it was a concern, I think, that was voiced by all principals of not having enough information. Like, one of the things I think that we have to get away from is, that it's okay to fail a couple of 9th grade classes and then for someone to say, oh, well, I'm in 10th grade. And they failed a couple of other 10th grade classes. Oh, I'm in 11th grade. And sometimes that has to do with attendance. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. But one of the things that we struggled with this year is, I'd say we have, and I'm going to throw the number at about 40 students who missed 90 or more days. And those are students who we have had conversations with, their families, and we're telling them that you're repeating your year. And the reason that we're saying that is because we don't have enough evidence to determine whether or not they're ready to move forward because they haven't been in class. So I have the retention data, which is, I would say, I don't have the exact number, but I would say it's about that number of kids who missed over half the time. So that's 90 or more days. And so those are students where we will have a specific plan for them. And, I think that sometimes what we have to realize is we need to provide opportunities like, is sometimes like if you're not gonna, it's gonna take you a little bit longer to graduate if there are issues that are preventing you from getting to school. On the other hand, if this was a year where, it was a year like, or 16 months like no other, and then you begin there, and then, we can find ways to allow you to slowly make up those credits that you've missed so that you still can be in a position to graduate. But, about, like I said, about 40 kids with 90 or more absences. And so we are reaching out specifically to families. And I know that they're doing the same thing at the other schools as well.
Thanks. And then just one other quick follow-up with regard to the Director of Progressive Pathways. From a transition perspective and from a data sharing perspective, how much of that information around CalCut to the high school is happening? And so that your team can be proactive. You don't have to wait for the first quarter to know that there are issues and challenges, and how much of that is from students that are coming into the district for the first time from charter schools, perhaps. What's there an opportunity to know what you're getting as opposed to having to wait 45 or 50 days?
Right. So good question. So Lisa and Ashley have been great about communicating with us. So for instance, there's two things going on, I would say, with, and Lisa can cut in if I get this wrong, but there are a small handful of students, they're working with their parents, and they're essentially going to do a grade 8.5, where they're going to spend the first semester at CalCut, and they're going to spend the second semester in the 9th grade. And then what we're basically saying is, because of the learning loss, you're going to do some summer work at CalCut. You're going to spend your first semester at CalCut, and then you're going to transition to the high school. One of the things I'd like to do, if we can work it out, because there's a fixed period, is to have those kids participate in that 9th grade transition class, if it works. This is the first time Lisa's hearing of this. This was my recent brilliant idea. And then they'll do some work in the summer to basically get themselves so they're ready for 10th grade. It's just taking them a little bit longer. So we have that program. And then on Monday, we met with Mr. Lavoisier, the guidance counselor, as well as Lisa, that they met with our school counselors, our school psychologists, our social worker, and they outlined their students who they felt were really going to need some additional support coming in immediately. So I also know that Dr. Paez has some plans this summer to do some newcomer orientation work right before school starts with 8th graders. So there's a lot of things that are going on. I think the one thing that, that this position will do is there'll be someone who specifically is devoted to creating those systems, so that if there is turnover for whatever reason in leadership, hopefully there's not, that there is someone who can make sure that these things are continuing to happen. And that's not to say that, the math department, that Vinnie Palladino, our 9th grade math teacher this year, wasn't in communication with the CalCut math teachers to look at test scores and, where kids need to be appropriately placed. Same with our ESL department. So that academic piece is happening, but also flagging those kids who we identify are going to need supports immediately.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Me.
You go.
I want to congratulate Carmen Ruiz on her new position. She's fantastic for the role. She's built relationships with students to the point where they interrupt her all day long, because I've seen it myself, and when we weren't in person fully before, they'd stop in all the time in her office. So kudos to you, Carmen. Congratulations. My question is, with Ms. Ruiz moving on to the new role and Mr. Volpe retiring, how many open counselor positions do we have? I thought I heard you mention we have one already. Just to clarify.
Sure, good question. So we were able, the additional counselor, Dr. Toledo, I think, raised this at an earlier meeting, although none of us can be blamed for remembering anything from 2 months ago. But we were super fortunate to hire a fourth school counselor, Yadira Garcia, who has been a great support, even though she began in March. And so she'll have a full caseload, but she's been supporting summer school. She's been creating systems. She's been meeting with students who are looking at all course network, looking at concurrent enrollment possibilities. She has a wealth of experience, is a great asset. So we have 2 school counselor positions open. Mr. Volpe's retirement and Carmen leaving for her position. We interviewed today. We're interviewing tomorrow. And we'll be interviewing next week. So we hope that we'll have, we had a couple of strong candidates today. So hoping that we can find folks who can come in, mesh with the culture that has been established in that program with Yadira and Carmen and Nada Gilmet, and really be able to continue to provide support and be able to do so with more supports around them and less kids, because they'll be focusing on 200 kids as opposed to 250 to 300. And we're also changing our structure, and this will go out to families this summer, is we are changing our guidance structure, where previously Mr. Volpe was in charge of all 11th and 12th graders. Carmen was connected to 9th and 10th graders, and Nada was with our MLL population. Nada will remain in that role, but the other 3 counselors are going to have an alphabet, and they are going to have all kids, A through G, H through, whatever it is, H through M. And so the idea is they'll be working with 9 through 12, but they'll also be working with families, because if there are younger siblings, they'll come through. And so the idea is not to have one person in charge of all the seniors, because that's a big job in and of itself. Not that the other years aren't important, but it does allow for more connections with families and counselors, and consistency for students to have the same counselor for 4 years.
Love it. I love the idea. My other, suggestion for Carmen, and I know you've already thrown your own amazing suggestions for Lisa and Carmen, but I would love to see some sort of collaboration, maybe mid-year towards the end of the year. So the second half of the school year, where the upcoming 9th graders are going to the high school for visits, starting to get to know the school, get to know the teachers, the classes. So they start earlier on. The plan to catch up sounds fantastic. I think they need it, and they'll have the opportunity to still complete their 9th grade for the ones that, are getting there slowly for the end of this year. But I think moving forward, if we had a collaboration with Calca and the high school, where they, got to learn where they're going to go and start looking forward to the programs at athletics, just to get them excited and motivated. Tough with middle schoolers. I had my own.
I agree with you 100%. In a previous, 2 previous districts in Rhode Island that I worked in, we basically, we had classes. We started pretty early, because we, like here, kids are also making decisions about where they want to go next year, right? So they can look at, they can look at charters. They can be looking at, they can be looking at private schools. So there's a lot of different opportunities. And I think if we do that type of work earlier, because we have to, because we still have big classrooms. And so, you really can't fit more than 3 or 4 kids in one classroom all the time. So Carmen has already done a lot of that. We do that with our charter schools in the city. But I think doing something like that provides that benefit. And I also think that, and again, I'm biased, but I do think that the high school gets a bad rap in terms of the opportunities, in terms of the reputation it has. And I also think, and this is not just Carmen, because, Carmen's probably, my phone's probably blowing up right now with Carmen going like, what are you doing? I think the other piece that we really need to focus on, and this really has as much to do with Jackie Barbosa, our director of CTE and other pathways, is let kids know what opportunities they have coming into the school, that they can get computer science certificates, you know, whether it's through Geek Squad, they can take AP classes in that area. They could take cybersecurity classes and get certificates that they can use, that they can get their CNA, their EMT, that they can be ready for a nursing or a doctoral or being a doctor, that they are going to be well prepared to do those things, because I don't think that that story is always the one that's put forth. And so that's a narrative that, you know, it's incumbent upon me to do that. But I also think that one way we need to sell that is just by having people come and see what's going on. And I think that's ultimately what sells your school.
Awesome. And then I have one last thing, and that is that I would love moving forward. And this was a surprise to me because when I was in high school, back in my day, it wasn't really cool to go to CCRI, but I learned with my kids now that CCRI, that it's exciting, and I would love for us to start to celebrate those acceptances to CCRI. I mean, we know everybody gets accepted, but just the fact that they're choosing to just continue their education, I would love that to be celebrated on all our platforms that we use to celebrate the same students that go to REC, URI, PC. So I would love to see that. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you. And just to piggyback on what Brian's suggestion is earlier, I think a lot of times our struggle with CCRI is that because it's rolling admission, sometimes we don't know if kids are, but if that's done a little bit earlier, then we have a better opportunity to celebrate that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else? I have two quick ones. Appreciate your time, and I won't keep everybody here. Did you skip the grading policy bullet?
Maybe. I don't remember talking about it, so I probably did. So thank you. Thank you for mentioning it. So when we talked about those, the sort of the cracks in the earthquake that was the pandemic that really exposed some deficiencies, one of the pieces that the principal's leadership team identified very early on was the need for a grading policy. And so that work is being done this summer. And I just want to say that, you know, I don't think, like, grading policies are about as much fun as a committee as scheduling committees. Everybody's got their own opinion. Everybody's got, like, this is the way it needs to be. But I think that foundationally, we need to come to some foundational agreements about the way that we assess students and the way that those assessments are reflected in terms of how we report that out to the community, to parents and the kids themselves. And feedback has to be at the core of that. So that conversation is beginning this summer. And I don't think what you'll see in September is a high school grading policy that we're presenting to you. Instead, what I think you'll see is these are some common foundational practices that we think are critical. And this is how we're working towards making those something that are consistent from teacher to teacher, right? Because we know that in high school, you can have 5 different teachers. And while there are some consistencies, that how that grade is determined can be very different. And so being clear about how kids are getting grades, why they're getting them, and how they can improve, I think that foundational discussion everybody recognizes is one that we need to have. And so that is another big piece this summer. I mean, the teachers have been really, I think, you know, I mean, maybe you'll think this is over the top, but they've been heroic in their ability to be present for the students and address those issues. And at the same time, develop classes for period 6, engage in a grading policy, look at high quality curriculum resources, and, you know, start to look at what that's going to look like in terms of their curriculum. Their ability to take that on, as well as everything that they've had to take on in the present, has been amazing. And so I really applaud them for that. And the grading policy, there'll be a small group, about a dozen teachers that are working on that. And then we'll present something to the faculty in September. So we can keep you updated on that. So thanks for bringing that up.
Sure. And Dr. Toledo, I think this is a conversation that we go to about policies and, vision. And I think that it would be interesting to engage in that conversation across the district, because you will have two children, even in elementary, being graded and supported differently if we don't, at a minimum, have a base of a vision of a philosophy, of grading philosophy that we can, like you said, share and explain to our community as to what we're looking for to say whether you are learning what we want you to learn. So it'd be interesting to have that conversation, see what you come up with at high school, and then across the rest of the district. And then my final question is, you were talking about getting all the data about students as they're coming in. I've been on this board for a long time, but what happened to our early warning systems? Like the flags, the red flags that were supposed to be coming up, and do they still exist? In what way do they exist? Are they helpful? Were they not helpful? How are we putting all this? Is this something new that you're doing, or is it build on what we had before?
Yeah, so I have to say that the early warning system, like this is finishing my third year, that has not been something that was a practice that was consistently implemented since I've been here. And so I think that, I think the early warning system is, I know that there are pieces in Skyward that are connected to that, but it has not been something that we have been accessing on a consistent basis, at least at the high school level. I think that, what you're getting at is exactly what we recognize we have to be able to do, especially in 9th and 10th grade. I think one of the challenges has been, well, so what? So we see kids who are becoming chronically absent. We see kids who are struggling in content areas. What do we do about it? And I think the ESSER funds are providing us some of the opportunities to create those interventions that we need. But we don't have a formal early warning system that we are using at the high school. I connected to that, I would say this, and it's sort of, maybe it's a nice way to wrap this up, is I do think it's appropriate for you as a board of trustees to be asking us to report on, 7 or 8 core areas of data, which are school-wide, like attendance, graduation rate. But I think the other piece is that we haven't talked about is student growth. Like, how are we measuring student growth? So no matter what the grade means, how are we measuring whether kids are moving forward in terms of their literacy and numeracy skills? And so I have some suggestions. I didn't mention them on the slides, but they're very much embedded into what I presented to you tonight.
Thank you. That's great. I think you could tell by the questions and the interest that this is something that is near to and dear to all of us. And it's a conversation that we want to continue to engage with you on. So thank you for coming and presenting, for your honesty and putting it out there. I think some of these data are very hard to see, but it's our reality. And the more that we can have it as a collective reality that we can all push forward to change, the better we'll be. So this is a great conversation to end the school year with, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you. I mean, maybe this goes without saying, but thank you for all of your support that you provided throughout, especially these past 16 months.
Thank you. Have a good summer. Dr. Lee, you have more? You have some things to share with us?
Considering just cutting all the rest of the slides.
No, this is our last one for the school year. Let's end it on a strong point.
Yeah.
We have so much to cover. I'm gonna turn on my lights because I can barely see myself now because it's how late it is. So go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you, Principal McCarthy. And actually the other principals were texting me during saying, when can I have a turn to share about all the great stuff happening at my school? So I know Vice Chair Grace had proposed maybe an every other month opportunity for a school leader to come and share an update. So that way you'd hear from every school leader about once a year. But to close out tonight, I do want to bring us back here. and share our literacy update. So this is data you've seen monthly, and with tomorrow being the last day of school, hopefully we wake up with one more student maybe having shifted levels, but we modified our goal mid-year when we sort of understood the impact, obviously, of full distance learning, and decided that we wanted to get to a point where we had more students reading at proficient levels than emergency. And you might remember, like early 2021, even back in March, we were looking at about, very, very small percentage of students who had who were reading at proficient levels. So I'm thrilled to say that today, while we didn't hit the goal of greater than, the percentage of students reading at proficiency is exactly equal. And maybe tomorrow we'll finally tip those scales. But this is the highest percentage of students reading at proficiency since I've been in the district. And so I just want to pause and thank every teacher, every teaching assistant, every parent, every reading warrior, because it truly took a village. We brought in retirees. Big shout out to Joanne Diggle and Michelle Hurley, who came back this spring. Every classroom teacher, they've just gone so far above and beyond. And the growth we saw kids make once we finally had kids back in person was just phenomenal. So huge kudos to everyone who should feel a lot of pride in this data, including the students, of course. So there were lots of questions before about, so what happens next with the next round of money? So Carrie gave us a very detailed update on how we use those initial COVID relief funds to get us from March 13th, 2020 to tomorrow when we wrap up this school year. Then a week from today, we will submit our plans for ESSER 2 to RIDE. We've gone through a process where I shared last month. We wanted to ensure there was a weighted funding model so that schools were receiving additional dollars for in order to support multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and those students with disabilities who are multilingual learners. And so here you can see a distribution of how many students are in each of those categories in each of our 6 schools, and therefore the dollars that were driven with the ESSER 2 pot of money toward each of those schools. Then with all the proposals that each school team came up with, and those were teams that are collaborative with the school leader, parents, teachers, support staff, and at the high school, students. Those teams came up with how they want to use the funds to best support the school's goals and drive academic acceleration and social emotional wellness. An interesting breakdown here when we looked across all 6 schools and sort of summarized, these are the 4 buckets that RIDE gave us of how you can use the funds. You can see by far the largest pot of money is going towards academic acceleration that happens during the school day, then followed by resources that will drive academic acceleration after school, and then our social emotional wellness during and after school. So that's just one way we can sort of analyze how we're using the funds with ESSER 2. A different cut is by the proposed investment. So I went into sort of broad strokes categories of curriculum, extended learning, meaning summer, after school, vacation academies, professional learning, which would be anything from coaching to workshops, but even tuition. We are working to increase the number of our teachers who are certified to support multilingual learners. And so we have built in some of that, hopefully tuition support in professional learning. Then the biggest category being new team members and again, technology. So this is a breakdown now by investment. And then, because I'm sure you're wondering, where would those almost $4 million go for our new team members? The chart below breaks it down by sort of the group that those team members would fall into across Council 94, our Central Falls Teachers Union, and then team members who are non-union, as well as some examples of each. So we are excited to propose additional members of Council 94, such as additional homeschool liaisons, adding a team translator on the special education team specifically to support our Cape Verdean families. So right now we have 2 people who do that for our Spanish speaking families, but no one for our Cape Verdean families. And so we want to add a role like that. Some examples of new roles in the teachers union would be, of course, teachers, but specifically also adding interventionists across every school, guidance counselors, which you heard some reference to today. But it really does echo back to the dream budget that you all asked us to do in very early 2020 before the pandemic hit. So we are finally able to add all those supports that we've known all along were what was evidence-based and what our families were telling us they wanted to see and what we knew was best practice, but didn't necessarily have the resources to implement. And then that last category of new team members would be those who don't fall into either union. And so we are looking to add some assistant principals or deans. It's going to be a different role depending on which school, because we have an amazing team of school leaders who I think are the instructional leaders to really support accelerated learning for our students. And yet they are tasked with doing so many other things. So in another district, even as close as Providence, Calcut, as an example, would a middle school of that size would likely have 4 assistant principals. And we've been on a model of 1 principal, 1 AP. And so we do plan to use some of the ESSER funds to add an assistant principal or dean so that we can take some of the operational work or student behavior work away from the current principal in order to empower him or her to be even more of an instructional leader. And models that we know have been very successful over the years, like our Warrior Fellows program. Every school actually asked for additional Warrior Fellows with their ESSER funds. So we're looking to build that team out to be the largest cohort that we've ever had. And as you know, over the years, this has been an incredible pipeline to bring aspiring teachers and aspiring team members who want to work in public education to come and learn about this incredible community and experience it, or be, if they're from the community, not learn about it, but to work in the schools. And many of them have become full-time employees. So we're thrilled to think about expanding that pipeline with the ESSER funds as well. So that is a super high level summary of ESSER 2. As we continue to work night and day on the narrative that will go with that, I'll be sure to share it with the board. Again, it's due to ride next Thursday, so we'll make sure you have a copy of that, which sort of summarizes how we are going to make the best use of these resources for our students. Any questions on ESSER 2 before I move on? I guess by 8 o'clock, the questions start to diminish. You had so many for Bob. No.
I can't see everyone, but I think Google was the only one I can't see, but continue.
Okay. And then tied to our ESSER funds, many of you may have already seen or been a part of our new group of families and students that the families named Voces con Poder. So this is a participatory budgeting project. And we're running it much like a parent college course. So the families and students who are participating are doing this twice a week, where they are going through with Council President Vega and Pam Jennings, who actually co-taught the elective at the high school. and teaching the families and students about participatory budgeting, helping them to generate ideas that will go on a formal trilingual ballot that any family in Central Falls School District, any of our families can then vote on for how we use $100,000 of the ESSER funds. So this has been really exciting. I wanted to highlight a note from a parent that they wrote at Tuesday's session on the feedback. They wrote this handwritten note, and for those who don't speak Spanish, it translates to, with the beginning of this new revolution, I am convinced of the change in my community, and I am amazed what we can do and are learning. Voices with power. Amen. And so it's just been an incredible experience, even just 3 weeks in. And so we will continue to share updates. Telemundo did some coverage of it too. If you haven't seen those clips, I'll be sure you guys get the links. And last slide, which I added mid-meeting when this was sent to me by the mayor. So about 2 hours ago, this article posted in the Globe. They came yesterday to the high school, spoke with Desi, one of our incredible students, and toured the high school to just learn a little bit more about why this, why the General Assembly is considering legislation that would authorize $144 million, which the large bulk of would go to building a brand new high school over on Higginson. And so just want to give you an update that the legislation passed House Finance last week, went to Senate Finance tonight and passed. And so this is gaining more momentum and very quickly. So we will hopefully share more great updates soon, but are going to just keep dreaming big for CFSD. And I was asked to give a quick preview of next school year and what are the big things that are going to change. It's 7:59, so I hope to do this by 8 o'clock. We are back to full in-person learning next school year. Hooray. COVID testing will continue, but will likely look different. We are one of the districts statewide that was asked to pilot pooled testing, and that's a model that the state is looking to shift to. And so that's been happening at Raices, and we anticipate that will be a shift statewide for next year, but we'll also likely reduce the volume of testing that's happening. And then the last thing, Vice Chair Grace and I are excited to share that our next board meeting will be in person again. So at our August 5th meeting, we'll get to finally be back together and then do in-person meetings for next school year. And that is the end of the superintendent's update. Any questions?
Questions, comments? Okay. I think that's a lot of stuff, and I think we are good. I don't think I have anything. Let me just make sure. Just to follow up on sort of a couple of things that came up. The presentations by other principals, we would love that. It's been a long time since we've had the opportunity to speak to our school leaders and to hear about what they were doing. It was something that we're doing a few years back, and then, just transitions, and last year all that was lost. So absolutely, we would love to start and think about a schedule that sort of makes sense, whether it's every month or every other month, or what is specific to a program, or just an overview of the schools. That is sort of the information that really fuels our work. And suggestions to the board as well as they hear what we do. We would love to get that feedback from our school leaders and our school community in general. And then I think that was it for you. I think that was it. That's all I have. Anyone else? Oh, Hugo has something. Go ahead, Hugo.
Yeah, I just want to say it was nice to be part of the participatory budgeting, and I was doing a research about that before I went to that meeting, and I didn't know that I started in Brazil and then in Chicago in the United States. So, and I like that because that, that way we can get our youth, involved in how to do things like that, how to work with the budget, and so that they can learn, parents and students. So that was nice, and I was there it was Tuesday, and the Tuesday session, and I thought only a few parents was going to go because it was raining, but no, there was a nice group there. So I hope this. Now they have $100,000. So, and I saw that some of them want AC in the rooms. So that will be good. So they can, when they are comfortable. So that will be great if they can do that. So they have to vote for that. So I don't know how it's gonna go. That will be great if they can, put ACs in each room. So we gotta wait and see what's gonna come up from that. Thank
Yeah.
you for doing that.
And we're getting some cost estimates on that one. That'll be far more than the 100,000, but there is a strong justification that it would allow us to do learning 12 months a year. So definitely going to look into it.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll do board comments, if anyone has any, and then we will come back, and then we're going to go back to a very, very important part of our agenda that we'll all be looking forward to deal with the superintendent's comment. But before that, we'll do that in executive session and come back. So comments from anyone on the board? Go, Bryant.
I just want to say thank you and congratulate all teachers, staff, faculty for a very successful yet very difficult year. So thanks for all of your hard work, y'all. We did it.
I absolutely want to second that. Remember the first meeting of the school year, how difficult that was for all of us. The place we were at, deciding whether to open, not to open, what it meant, and the weight that was on every single adult's shoulders to make sure that we were making the best decision for the children and for the adults in the buildings. So it's strange that it feels like a long time ago, and yet just yesterday that we were making those decisions. So thank you to everyone for an amazing year, for sticking through it, and for everything that you've done to end in a place that we are. You have truly the sincere appreciation of every board member, and we appreciate you coming to these meetings and sticking with us. For those of you who are still watching, thank you. And for those who are not here, please share our appreciation with them as well. And congratulations to the students. I mean, resilience defined, right? So it was great, even though the number were not where we wanted it to be. It was great to see that graduation. It was great to see the celebration at Calcutt yesterday. The graduations to kindergarten for everyone, even the ones who didn't have a celebration, just to be able to finish the year is amazing. So congratulations to all the students and their families as well. And that's it for me. So we're gonna go, I will need, go ahead, Liz,
I
go
have
ahead.
a comment.
Sure, go ahead.
I have one comment. I want to echo the thanks to all of our staff, any parents that are listening. I have one ask for everyone, and that is to please take some time after this difficult year to unwind, de-stress, get some self-care. You deserve it. You earned it. I appreciate all the work all the teachers have put in, and everyone from the very, very top to the very, very bottom. Just take some time this summer to unwind and do some self-care, and let's start off September strong. Thank you.
So I need a motion to enter into executive session. We should be a few minutes. For those of you who want to stay, we will come back to public session and we will be taking a vote on item or old 5B, old business, which is a superintendent's contract. We're going to executive session and a separate meeting, but this meeting will stay on, will remain open and recording, and then we will come back in a few minutes. So if anyone would like to read that executive session motion, we can move on to that.
I'll do that. So I move that we go into executive session under Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A1 and 2, discussion of job performance, character, or physical or mental health, collective bargaining, litigation, legal advice, teacher discipline hearing, and to discuss certain matters that are the subject of collective bargaining and litigation, and to conduct work sessions pertaining to collective bargaining and litigation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
So we have motion by Andrew Bramson and second by Hugo Figueroa. I'm going to do a roll call vote. The way I see you, Hugo Figueroa,
Yes.
Brian Estrada,
Yes.
Glenda Liz Colon,
Yes.
Andrew Branson,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. We are in executive session, so we're gonna leave this. Yes,
So we're gonna use the link you sent us, right?
yes, the link you received from me earlier today.
Thank you.
We'll be back, guys. Hello, everyone. We are coming back. We can talk. I'm sorry. I try to get them to go fast, but. Let's give everyone a chance to join us back in.
Now I am. Hello from the other side. Glenda, where are you?
Okay, I think, so we, I forget to have the record show that we have the board back in open session. It is 8:47 p.m. which came out of executive session, and I will entertain a motion to seal the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, hold on. That was Bryant and Andrew. Thank you. Any comments, questions, concerns, discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The minutes are sealed. And now I will entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's contract.
So move.
Second.
I'm gonna give it to both of you because you both said at the same time, Brian Estrada and Glenda Lees. So we have a motion on floor by Hugo Figueroa, seconded by Glenda Lees Colon and Brian Estrada. Comments, questions? So I'll make comments. Toledo. We have reviewed your contract and are really thankful for all the work that you have been doing in the school district. I don't know what the board is going to vote. I can't say what they're going to vote because I'm the chair or how it's going to go. But for those of you who are listening, we've spent a lot of time thinking about what a contract for the superintendent should be. It's been a lot of good conversations and it's been a really good process to think that through. For those of you who are interested, one of the things that we've talked about and we're really looking forward to is a conversation about specific, measurable, and attainable goals for our district, right? To have a vision that is clear that we can all rally around and move the district forward. So this is a document that is more than just a nuts and bolts employment contract, but it's also a commitment from this board to support you in the work that you have to do, and a commitment from you to lead us in that work. So it is a working document. It is a place to have conversations, a place for discussion, and really ultimately is a place to keep us all accountable for the seat that we take and for the privilege that we are given to be a part of the Central Falls School District. So we take very seriously the responsibility that we have been given and the vote that we're going to take. That's my comments on the discussion part of this contract. I invite anyone who wants to speak or say something else. And if there's any questions about the actual document, we can do that now, or we can take a vote, but it's up to you and the floor is open. So hearing none, let's take a vote. And I'm gonna do roll call. This is fun. Okay. Andrew Branson. Oh, he froze. Hold on. I'm gonna go to Brian Estrada.
Yes.
Glenda Lees Colon.
Yes.
Hugo Figueroa. Where did Hugo go? There he is. Andrew, are you back? He's frozen. All right, Andrew.
I'm back. Sorry, that was like the most anticlimactic freeze ever.
Right? Like, come on now.
I don't even know what the vote is. So
It's not a motion. It's to vote to approve the contract.
yes, enthusiastic, yes.
Okay, and I am also a yes. So thank you, Dr. Toledo. Congratulations. Officially welcome to the position that you've been holding for 2 years. We really, really look forward to the next few years and working together.
May I say a few words?
Go ahead. Absolutely, go for it.
I just, I want to, well, first of all, thank you all for approving the contract. I was starting to get a little nervous. The team was texting me saying, get on your, I bought a walking treadmill. So I was walking on the treadmill to try to burn the nervous energy, but truly, this has been the privilege of a lifetime to already serve in this role for the last 2 years. And I could not be more excited to continue in the role, hopefully for far more than 3, but certainly that you're entrusting me with the next 3 means the world. We have all been through so much together, bringing the district through the pandemic. And the fact that I can say on the last day of the toughest school year that will probably ever happen in our careers that I love my job, I hope tells you just how grateful I am that you've all voted for me to have the opportunity to keep doing it. And we will do right by all the kids in Central Falls. And by the time this contract's up, we're going to have kids in 3, 4, and 5-star schools. And I can't wait.
Very, very nice. Thank you so much. All right. So with that, I look forward to a motion to adjourn, and then we will see each other again in August. So to everyone, have a wonderful summer. As Kennedy said, please take some time to recharge and rest, and we will see you back here. So motion to adjourn, please.
So move.
So move. Second.
This is like a collective motion. I am going, can record show that the board unanimously motioned and second for adjournment at 8:53 p.m. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Good night.